Hey folks, I'm Allison. Welcome to my booktube channel. Today's video is going to be my TBR for May and June. I have been a little bit maybe overly ambitious in putting together this TBR, but there were a bunch of books that I got over the holidays that I have really been wanting to get to, and I recently made a video about new spring book releases, and that sparked me wanting to read a few more books. So there's a lot here, but I'm excited to talk to you about all of them, and hopefully we'll make decent progress at least. The first book on my list is If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Karamura. This is a book translated from Japanese. It is about a man who, on his final day that he has to live, is visited by the devil, and the devil offers him a deal. If he will agree to allow the devil to make one thing disappear from the world, the devil will give him one more day to live. And he recreates this deal with the devil several days running, and over the course of the book is exploring what are the things in life that we maybe think that we need to live a good life and actually can do without, and what are the things that we do need and that without which life would not really be worth living. That's all I really know about this book, other than that it has this adorable little cat. This is the narrator's cat, Cabbage, on the front, and I picked this up in a Waterstones in the UK over the holidays, so I've been wanting to get to it, and this is the first book that I'm going to start with because I have been reading a lot of heavy books. I read some classics in the end of winter, and then I read a couple of quite heavy books. I read The Sympathizer, and I just have been in the mood for something a little bit lighter. So I'm excited to start the summer with this. The next book on my list is Blackouts by Justin Torres. I got this at a really cute little tiny local bookstore in DC called Loyalty Books. It's up in Petworth, and they had an author signed copy. I have a shocking number of, because a lot of these books are new books that I bought myself over the holidays, I have a surprising number of them that are signed by the author. Makes me feel fancier than I am normally, but this book I know almost nothing about. It is like a concept novel about a man who is losing parts of his memory. And it just looks cool, frankly. It's written in a very interesting way. So they have like these excerpts where he's done sort of blackout poetry, and then all these like old photographs interspersed. And then the actual novel is in more like sort of little vignettes. Like the chapters are 1 page, 2 pages, sort of little self-contained things, and then interspersed with these blackout poems and photos edited to have the identities of the people in them blacked out, and like works of modern art. And it just looks fascinating, and I'm really, really excited to read it. That's literally all I know. It just was one that looked cool, and it was intriguing and mysterious enough to me that I went ahead and picked it up. Then the next book is Cry, Voidbringer by Eileen Ho. I definitely want to read some fantasy. I haven't been reading that much fantasy lately. I've been reading a lot of literary fiction, and that just weighs on me. I think the escapism aspect of fantasy is really valuable to me, so I am excited to put some fantasy on my TBR. This is about a woman who has been conscripted since childhood as a magical soldier in a war being fought by the kingdom that I guess sort of colonized or took over her culture and has been conscripting its magical children to further the expansion. And the woman has just been a sort of jaded soldier for most of her life, but she rescues a young child who has extraordinary powers and doesn't want that child to be conscripted into this life of violence and war that she has been living. And through her efforts to protect the child, I think ends up kind of taking down the unjust rulers of the kingdom, or something along those lines. I think this is going to be a pretty traditional kind of fantasy novel, but that's exactly what I was looking for. Yeah, I'm just really in the mood for some down the line fantasy, and this looked really fun. The back says, "In a broken system, do you save yourself or fight for the people you love?" So real straight up classic fantasy kinds of moral conundrums, and in a high magic kind of setting. So I'm very excited for it. Then the next book is called Sisters in Yellow by Mieko Kawakami. This is one that I discovered while doing research for my March new releases book. This just came out in March 2026, and you can see I also have a signed copy of that. I went to a bunch of different bookstores looking for this book because I was so intrigued by the description of it online. This is about a 15-year-old girl named Hannah who, and this is also translated from Japanese, it's set in Tokyo, and she is sort of chafing against being a teenager, and she meets this slightly older woman named Mieko, and the two of them open a bar together. And through the course of running the bar together, I think Mieko kind of draws Hannah into the criminal underworld in Tokyo, and the book is basically about the relationship between these two women, which I think is very intense and volatile, and also about Hannah's experience coming into contact with the adult world. It's very much a coming of age novel. She is leaving childhood behind and, just realizing how scary and difficult adulthood can be. And through sort of this very intense relationship with someone, a few years older than her. So I'm really, really excited for this. I also just loved this color, the sort of lucky lemon in the shot glass. I thought that was really beautiful. And I love books about intense relationships between women, with deep and sort of obsessive friendships between women. I think that's just fun. I also think this is supposed to be just exciting from a narrative standpoint. The other two literary fiction books that I have on my list already, If Cats Disappeared from the World and Blackouts, are both sort of philosophical, experimental kinds of novels. And this, I think, is just going to be more exciting. Like, it's going to be more characters getting into trouble and having to get themselves out of trouble. And it's nice to have something with like a real narrative pull to it. So yeah, so I'm really, really excited about this one as well. I mean, I'm going to be excited about all of these. I wouldn't be putting them on my TBR if I wasn't. So then I have Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This I actually got in a little free library, so that's awesome. I really loved Americana and had been wanting to read something else of hers. This is supposed to be about two sort of teens in Nigeria who, they're like upper class and they live with their mother and father, but their home life is very sort of violent and constricted. And they end up going out to stay with their aunt, who is much more open-minded and academic and progressive. And then they go back home, and it's basically about the sort of culture clash that they experience, having sort of had their minds broadened to the kind of way that life can be when you're with people who are open and accepting, and then having to go back to this very constrained home life, and also, I think, reevaluate their relationships with their parents from a new perspective. This is going to be another sort of coming of age novel. And yeah, I'm just really looking forward to reading something else by this author. She's an amazing, amazing writer and a very talented observer of the human condition. So this should hopefully be a banger. Then the last book on my list, and again, this is another signed copy. I got this at a bookstore in the UK. I went on a little bit of a holiday treat yourself book buying spree, which is unusual for me, but you know, over the holidays, what are you gonna do? I was visiting all of these really cute little bookstores all over the UK, so it was just very tempting. This is from Topping and Company, booksellers in Bath, and this is The Emperor of Gladness by Vuong. This is a book that I wanted to read because I saw Cameron's review of it on her channel Slaggy Book Club. She talked about it as really life-affirming, and that I think is something that maybe we could all use a little more of these days in this sort of, I don't know, I feel like there's just a nihilism that seems to be sort of sweeping media, and so anything that is hopeful and life-affirming is something to grab onto. This is a book about a young man who doesn't have enough money to go to college or doesn't get into college, and he tells his parents that he is going to college, and then every day pretends to go off to college but actually goes to work in a restaurant. And it's about the people that he works with in the restaurant. They're sort of a group of people who work these kind of minimum wage jobs, and that just is going to be their life, right? This is not a book about someone who like gets into a fancy school and has a, you know, Cinderella story where through their intelligence and wit and hard work, they like pull themselves out of poverty. Like, this is not that book. This is a book about people who are born into poverty and live in poverty and still manage to find beauty and meaning and connection in life, and to not need to have this like imaginary fantasy of the future in which life gets better to be able to have a meaningful life. And yeah, Cameron just made this book sound really, really wonderful and life-affirming, and so I'm also really, really excited to read this one. Okay, so there you have it. There are the 6 books that I am hoping to read in May and June. We'll just have to see if this is overly ambitious. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to hear more from me, please consider subscribing. And thank you so much for spending some of your one wild and precious life with me watching this video.